Can you believe it? I mean, can you actually believe he just left? Kieran packed up all his crap, his stupid noisy keyboard and that worn-out gaming chair and just gone. Like poof, vanished. And for what? Seriously, for what? Because I suggested, that maybe going to bed before 3 a.m. might be a good idea for a human being with an actual job. That's it, that's the crime of the century, apparently. I wasn't even nagging, I was helping. Honestly, I'm floored. You try to look out for someone, you try to help them get their life together because you can see their potential. You put in the effort, you make schedules, you buy the healthy groceries they won't buy for themselves. And they just throw it all back in your face. He left a note on the counter, a freaking post-it note, can you believe the nerve? That just said, thanks for everything, I'm out. Thanks for everything, is that a joke? It has to be. He's just so fragile. Like you can't say anything to people these days without them completely falling apart. What was I supposed to do? Just sit there and watch him subsist on energy drinks and microwave burritos? I guess so. I guess that's what being a good roommate is now. Just shutting up and letting people slowly self-destruct. It's not my fault he can't handle a little constructive criticism. Right? It's ridiculous, utterly ridiculous. The crazy thing is, it wasn't always like this, not at all. When we first moved in together, he was great, honestly. He was the one who found this place. This apartment is a total miracle in this market, and I was at my absolute wit's end. I was about to sign a lease on a shoebox that smelled of damp and desperation, trying to convince myself that the lack of sunlight would be cozy. Then he called me out of the blue. We knew each other through a mutual friend, but barely, and was like, "Hey, I found a two-bedroom, it's perfect, you in?" Just like that. And God, I was so broke back then, just starting my new job. My stomach just sank when the landlord said we needed first, last, and a security deposit. I was doing the mental math, trying to figure out what I could sell. I told Kieran I'd need a couple of weeks to pull my share together. You know what he did? He didn't even hesitate. Just looked at me and said, "Dude, don't worry about it. I'll cover your deposit, pay me back whenever. We gotta lock this place down before some tech bro grabs it." Who does that? A practical stranger, he was a lifesaver. A genuine, bona fide lifesaver. In the beginning, it worked perfectly. We were the classic odd couple. His side of the living room was a controlled chaos of controllers, headsets, and a half-finished can of soda on a coaster. At least he used a coaster, I'll give him that. My side was all minimalist decor and, well, order. And it was fine. I'd stack his game cases neatly when I was cleaning, and he'd just laugh and mess them up again the next day. Sometimes he'd order a massive pizza for a late-night gaming session and knock on my door. "You can't live on kale salads alone, Serenity," he'd say, offering me a couple of slices. I didn't care that he'd be up late, the distant, muffled sound of him shouting at his computer screen with his friends. It was just background noise, the sound of someone else living in the apartment. It was nice, actually, comforting. He was this easygoing, reliable presence. He paid his share of the rent on the first of the month every month without me ever having to ask. He was a good guy, he was, which is why this whole thing is so insane. All I wanted was to see him apply that same reliability he showed me to his own life. What's so wrong with that? I think it all started to shift after I got my promotion at work. It wasn't a huge deal, just a team lead position, but it felt validating. Like all my hard work, my early mornings, my meal prepping, my color-coded calendars, it was all paying off. I felt like I'd finally cracked the code to a successful, optimized life. And when you feel like you have the answers, you want to share them, right? It's only natural. It felt like a responsibility almost. That's when I started to look at Kieran differently. I'd see him rolling out of bed at 10 on a Saturday, bleary-eyed and heading for the coffee pot, and instead of thinking, good for him, he's relaxing, I'd think, God, what a waste of a morning. He could have gone for a run, done his laundry, planned his week. His lifestyle suddenly stopped looking like a choice and started looking like a problem. A problem I, with my newfound expertise in life optimization, was uniquely qualified to solve. It was coming from a good place, honestly. I saw this great guy who was just like coasting. He was smart, he was kind, but he was just drifting. I wanted to help him unlock his full potential, so I started small. Subtle, I'd casually leave an article open on the kitchen table about the long-term effects of blue light on sleep patterns. Then I started texting him links to podcasts about productivity hacks. "Hey, thought you might find this interesting." I'd write all cheerful and helpful, he'd just reply with a thumbs up emoji. He wasn't getting the hint, so I got a little more direct. I bought a magnetic whiteboard for the fridge and started writing out a suggested daily routine for us. It had things like 7 a.m., rise and meditate, 7:30 a.m. Morning jog and 11 p.m. electronics off, wind down. I even added little motivational quotes at the bottom. I thought he'd see it and be inspired. Instead, he just started using the whiteboard to keep a running tally of who was winning in our imaginary roommate Olympics, with categories like most dishes avoided and loudest snoring. He thought it was a joke. Can you believe that? A complete joke. My efforts escalated. I started accidentally making too much of my green smoothie in the morning and leaving a glass for him on the counter. He'd thank me politely and then pour it down the sink when he thought I wasn't looking. I started leaving healthy snacks on his desk, almonds, rice cakes, stuff like that, to replace the chips he was always eating. I even signed us both up for a 5,000 charity run. I was so excited. I told him it would be a great goal for us to work towards together, a real bonding experience. He just stared at me deadpan and said, "Serenity, I get more exercise with my thumb on a controller than I have in my entire adult life. I'm not running anywhere unless I'm being chased." And he laughed. He just wasn't taking his own well-being seriously, and it was starting to drive me crazy. I mean, what kind of friend would I be if I just let him continue down that path? I had to do more. It was for his own good. Things really came to a head about a month ago. It was a Tuesday night, I think. I was trying to sleep because I had a huge presentation the next morning, a really important one. My whole career felt like it was riding on it. And of course, Kieran was in the living room with his gaming crew, shouting into his headset. It was like a war zone in there. Explosions, yelling, he's flanking left, flanking left. Get him, get him. It was almost midnight and the sound was seeping through my walls, vibrating in my skull. I went out there, wrapped in my robe, trying to keep my cool. I was already on edge. "Hey guys," I said, forcing a smile. "Any chance you could keep it down? Some of us are trying to be productive members of society tomorrow." I thought the little joke would soften it, you know. Make it sound less like a complaint and more like a friendly request. Kieran just gave me this annoyed look, muted his mic for a second and said, "Sorry, Serenity. It's the final round of the tournament, we'll be done soon." And then he just turned back to his screen, completely dismissing me. Soon turned into another hour. I was lying in bed, just fuming. My heart was pounding out of my chest. All I could think about was how this stupid, pointless game was going to ruin my career-making presentation. He was being so incredibly selfish. He knew how important this was for me. We'd talked about it. So I did what any rational person would do when faced with such blatant disrespect. I got up, walked over to the router, and I unplugged it. The silence was immediate and glorious. Then came the roar. "What the hell?" Kieran ripped off his headset and stared at me, his face glowing in the sudden darkness of the monitor. His friends' voices on Discord had been cut off mid-sentence. "Serenity, what did you do?" "I'm helping you," I said, and I honestly believed it. I held up the power cord like it was a trophy. "It's after midnight. This is an intervention. You need to sleep. Your health is more important than some silly game." I was so sure I was in the right. I felt like the responsible adult in the room. I have never seen him that angry, ever. His face went pale and his voice was shaking with a kind of rage I didn't know he possessed. "That wasn't a silly game. That was the championship match we've been working towards for 6 months. 6 months of practice, of strategy, you just forfeited for us. For my entire team." He gestured wildly at his dark screen. "They're all relying on me, or they were." "Oh, don't be so dramatic," I said, rolling my eyes. The adrenaline made me feel bold, righteous. "It's a game, you'll get over it. In the morning, you'll thank me when you wake up feeling refreshed and ready for your day." "Thank you," he whispered, and it was scarier than his yelling. "Thank you for what? For treating me like a child? For having zero respect for me or my life? You have no idea what you just did." He just stood there staring at me and I stared back, still clutching the cord. I didn't get it, I really didn't. I was just trying to do the right thing, the healthy thing. Why couldn't he see that? It was for his own good, for God's sake. The air was just thick with this new awful tension, and I knew deep down I had crossed a line, but I was too proud to admit it. I just told him he was overreacting and went back to bed, leaving him standing alone in the silent, dark living room. After the router incident, things got cold, really cold. He stopped talking to me unless it was absolutely necessary, just one-word answers. Morning, night. He started spending more time in his room, and when he was in the common areas, he wore his headphones constantly like a shield. The easy, comfortable silence we used to have was gone, replaced by this heavy, awkward quiet that felt like it was suffocating me. I tried to pretend like nothing happened. I kept up my routine. I'd make my smoothies, I'd clean the apartment, I'd leave my little notes. But my helpful gestures now felt aggressive, even to me. The week after the fight, I did a full grocery run and on impulse, I threw out all his junk food. The half-eaten bag of chips, the instant noodles, the frozen pizzas. I replaced it all with things I thought were better for him: protein bars, bags of kale chips, organic apples. I was trying to extend an olive branch in my own way, like, see, I still care about your well-being. That was the final straw, I guess. I came home from work that Friday and he was sitting on the couch waiting for me. No TV on, no game controller in his hands. Just sitting there, staring at the empty space where the TV used to be. The sight of him so still and quiet immediately set my teeth on edge. Hey, I said, trying to sound cheerful. Thinking about rearranging the furniture, I have some ideas. He didn't look at me, he just said, I found a new place. My stomach dropped. What are you talking about? A new place for what? To live, Serenity, he said, his voice completely flat, devoid of any emotion at all. My new apartment. I'm moving out next weekend. I just stood there, my work bag slipping from my shoulder. You're moving out? Why? Because of the game? Kieran, I already said you were overreacting. My voice started to get high-pitched. I did it for you, for your health. I'm trying to help you be a better version of yourselves. He finally turned his head and looked at me. There was no anger in his eyes anymore. There was just nothing, emptiness. It was worse than the anger. Serenity, he said, and his voice was so calm it was chilling. I appreciate all your good intentions. He actually used air quotes. But I don't need to be saved. I don't need to be fixed. I just needed a roommate. He stood up, so no, I'm not changing my mind, and that was it. He walked past me and went into his room, closing the door softly behind him. No shouting, no final, dramatic confrontation, just a quiet, calm, final rejection. It was like he had already left weeks ago and his body was just catching up. After he moved out, the apartment was perfect, spotless, quiet. Everything was exactly where it was supposed to be. My color-coded bookshelf was undisturbed, the throw pillows on the couch were always perfectly fluffed, and there wasn't a single dirty dish ever left in the sink. It was the optimized, efficient living space I had always wanted. And it was completely, soul-crushingly silent. A few days later, I decided to deep clean his old room, to erase the last traces of him and prepare it for a new, hopefully more aligned roommate. I was wiping down the inside of the closet when my hand brushed against a shopping bag tucked away in the back corner, hidden behind an old pair of sneakers he'd forgotten. Curious, I pulled it out. It was from a high-end electronics store. Inside, nestled in a sleek black box, was a brand-new, top-of-the-line mechanical gaming keyboard. It was one of those fancy ones with customizable lights and a million features I didn't understand. It looked expensive. Tucked into the box was the gift receipt. I unfolded it and my breath caught in my throat. The purchase date was the day before. The day before I pulled the plug on his router, he had bought it for himself. Probably as a reward, or maybe to celebrate the tournament he was so excited about. And I had trampled all over that excitement. I had turned his passion into a problem, his joy into a character flaw. This keyboard wasn't just a keyboard. It was a symbol of a part of his life he genuinely loved, a part I had dismissed as silly and childish. Now it was just an abandoned gift, a piece of useless, expensive plastic that served as the perfect monument to my own suffocating kindness. I never heard from him directly again. For a while, I let myself believe that he was probably miserable, that he'd realize how much he needed my structure, my guidance. I told myself he'd call eventually, admitting I was right all along. It's pathetic, I know. About 2 months after he left, I was just scrolling mindlessly through Instagram, the usual late-night doom scroll, and then I saw it. A post from our mutual friend, Jessica. It was a group photo from a party, and right in the center of the picture there was Kieran. He was in a bright, sunny apartment, his new place, I guess, and he was grinning from ear to ear. He was surrounded by his friends, the same guys I'd heard shouting through the walls, and he was holding a trophy, a big, shiny silver trophy. Jessica's caption read, "So proud of these champs. First place in the regional finals, knew you could do it, Kieran." He looked amazing, genuinely happy, healthy. He was laughing, his eyes were bright, and he looked more alive than I had ever seen him when we lived together. He wasn't just surviving without me, he was thriving. My help hadn't been a lifeline, it had been an anchor, and now that he'd cut himself free, he was soaring. He had moved on so completely that it felt like I had never even existed, and I was just left there, alone, in my perfect, quiet, empty apartment.